Good morning. My name is Kate Fronta, and on behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to our worship service today. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome you if you are in the building or online or a little bit of each. If you are straight or gay or a little bit of each. If you are tall or short, or a little bit of each. If you are doubting or believing, or a little bit of each. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. Just a quick reminder before our service begins, for those who are present in our building, for the safety of all, we have adopted some reopening guidelines for meeting in the building and on the grounds, which many of you, I'm sure, have seen. They include, leave your masks on over your nose at all times unless you have a speaking role. There will be no coffee hour, and we ask that you not gather in the building following the service. Maintain social distancing between household groups in the building and during any outside activities. And during the hymns, we will not sing, but you are invited to express yourself by humming or using simple movements instead of singing. And for more details and for other church happenings, please see our e-news and check our website at firstuuwilm.org. Know that we are taking the utmost care during this time for the safety of all. Thank you. And now let us continue preparing our hearts and minds for worship.
I just have to savor the fact that we have people here. Just excuse me as I drink it in and just appreciate the fact that both in our building and online we are gathered this morning. It's wonderful to be with you. As we enter this time of worship, let this be a time of remembering vibrant possibilities that are often conveyed to us in the contours of our stories and in the rhythms of our songs. During this holy hour, in whatever way we can, let's shed whatever has hardened our hearts to ourselves and to one another. Whatever has closed our eyes to truly see ourselves in one another, whatever has deafened us to the songs of those who for generations have not fully known the justice that we care about, have not fully known the equity that we dream about, have not fully experienced the compassion that we speak about. Ours is a faith that dares to dream of a community so beloved that we make one another's condition our own. Ours is a faith that dares to sing, for we realize a sacred unity where my songs are your songs too, where your songs are my songs as well. Come, let us worship together.
For our friends at home, if you have a chalice there, please, I invite you to light it now with me. And let us join in the song of our community. Together for this time, unified by our flame, let us sing our heart songs together. Our first hymn,
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Hi, everyone. This week was the autumn equinox. The autumn equinox is when the night and the day are the same length, 12 hours each. The equinox means that summer is over and autumn is here. From now until the winter solstice, the days will grow shorter and the nights longer. The weather will grow colder. Throughout time, people have wondered, why do the days grow shorter and the nights longer? Why do the seasons change? Why do plants and food grow in the spring, but not the winter? Sometimes people created stories to answer these questions. Today, I am sharing a story that is thousands of years old called Persephone. It comes from Greece and explains why plants don't grow in the autumn and the winter, and explains why there are seasons. Those of you who know Greek mythology will find this story different from what you may have heard. But that doesn't mean it is impossible. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a goddess of agriculture and farming who inspired people all over the world to plant seeds and grow gardens of fruits and vegetables and flowers and groves of trees. This goddess, whose name was Demeter, had a daughter named Persephone, whom she loved more than anyone else in the whole world. In this land, there was no winter. People planted and harvested food all year long. To help the plants grow, Demeter and Persephone loved to walk underground with Persephone's aunts. There was Ceres, who oversaw the cereal crops, Flora, who colored the flowers, Venus, who cared for herbs and kitchen gardens, and Eridani, who loved every single plant, even the homely ones. The goddesses encouraged the seeds and rootlets to sprout and grow all year long. One day, Persephone turned to her mother. "When we walk under the ground," she said, "I hear the spirits of the dead moaning and crying. They tell me they're sad and lonely. I would like to care for them." "That's not possible," Demeter replied. Persephone's aunts chimed in. "That simply isn't possible. We're in charge of plant life. Our job is to encourage agriculture," Demeter explained. "Mother," Persephone responded, "you and my aunts sing to me these words all the time. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads. And no, I will love you still. This is where my heart is leading me, Mother." One of Persephone's aunts cried out, "But we need you. We need you to help with our family's work. You know the earth's soil is being depleted from the constant growing of plants, and we are becoming exhausted from all the work of growing plants all year long. You must stay and continue the work of our family." Demeter looked carefully at her daughter and then spoke. "I see that Persephone's path is leading in a different direction. Let's all sit down and talk about what is possible." So the goddesses sat together and considered all the different possibilities. Demeter and her sisters realized they needed balance in their lives. They decided to take a break from growing plants while Persephone was underground with the spirits of the dead. This would also provide a time for the earth to rest and rejuvenate and possibly create a better harvest. Persephone would take a break from her work with the dead and come above ground to spend time with her mother and aunts when everything was in bloom. And so Persephone gathered up a bouquet of poppies and wheat to take with her. And then she opened the door to the underworld and walked down a flight of stairs that seemed to be endless. At every level, she stopped for a while and gave poppies and wheat to the spirits of the dead who had heard she was coming. She hugged them and listened to them and sat them in circles around her, and she told stories, few of which were true. But that's how mythology is born. And her mother and aunts, they rested. They took some time to rejuvenate. And for the first time, autumn came to the land, followed by winter. Leaves fell from the trees, snow covered the ground, and the soil and earth also had time to rest. Then, one day, Demeter saw daffodils popping up out of the barren, snowy ground where gardens had once bloomed. The ants heard whispers coming through the windows of the underworld. Queen Persephone is going home to her mother. Queen Persephone will bring life back to the wintry land, and her mother and aunts will be cheerful. The plants that people require to live will begin growing and blooming again. And that is exactly what happened. Persephone walked back up the endless stairs and found her mother and her aunts. By this time, the girl had grown up. She spoke with her mother and her aunts, woman to woman, and told them how the spirits of the dead had elected her their queen. They told Persephone how they had rested, and the soil was now rejuvenated and ready for plants to grow and bloom. There would be a bounty of food that no one thought was possible before. And that is how the goddesses learned that there are different possibilities from what is. It is also how the seasons came to be. I wonder how your ideas have changed at different times in your life. I wonder what possibilities you have sought. I wonder if there have been possibilities that you pursued that seemed scary to others, but you did them anyway.
As we move now into a time of prayer and meditation, allow yourself to settle into a steady, restful place within. And from this centered place, you may begin to do some gentle noticing of whatever captures your attention right now, without necessarily attaching to one or the other thought or the concern. Continue to simply notice these concerns that you are carrying within. It could be a concern for yourself, a concern for a loved one, or a concern for someone or something happening in our world. In this gentle noticing, you may be silently saying to yourself, well, there's this, as you acknowledge a particular concern. And there's this, as you acknowledge another concern. And you might even have another, so that you might then say, and then there's this. Whatever this is, hold everything first in a gentle practice of noticing. And only as you begin to feel ready, you might, with curiosity, begin inquiring within by asking, right now, which of these concerns most wants my loving attention and my caring action? Acknowledge this particular concern among the others that you could have also easily have focused on, and be with that particular concern right now. Recognizing that in this company of others in this sanctuary and online, each of us is noticing, being with, and inquiring around our particular concern right now. Mozart said that music is not in the notes, but in the silence between the notes. Likewise, if these concerns that we are each holding right now, individually and collectively, are the notes of our lives right now, may we be drawn to listen not just to these notes, but to the music that is in the silence between these notes. Our particular concerns right now are surrounded by silence, and in the silence that follows, allow a deeper wisdom to arise in us as we seek ways to respond to what most has the attention of our heart. Let us embrace and be embraced by the silence that follows.
Staying mindful, now may we turn our attention to those who might be in need of love and support from this community. Please say their names or type them in the chat box. Karen, Anthony, Christina. May all whose names were said either aloud or in our hearts feel the possibilities of love, hope, and healing this day.
The reading this morning is excerpted from the book by Heather McGee, The Sum of Us, What Racism Cost Everyone, and How We Can Prosper Together. Heather McGee, as you may already know, is an expert in economic and social policy who chairs the board of Color of Change, the nation's largest online racial justice organization. In this selection from her book, she writes, "For all the differences among the world's major religions, they all hold compassion and human interconnectedness as central values. They all subscribe to a sacred vision of a world without racism. As I traveled around the country, engaging with people around the cost of racism, I often began our conversations discussing laws and policies, wealth and income, but in the end, many of the talks settled into a quiet, personal place. People, brown, black, and white, revealed a moment of confession, of frustration, or of hope, and it all came from an emotional, even a spiritual sense that this just isn't how we're supposed to be. It made me think about my own spiritual beliefs," she writes. "I believe in a divine force to which we are all connected, and I admire the rituals and community building that organized religion offers. But I didn't grow up as a church goer." She says, "My mother, a deeply spiritual woman and a feminist, could never really accept religion that figured the divine creator as male. Yet I realized that I pursue my professional calling not only to improve our economy, but also out of a belief in the unseen, a promised land of caring, just society. Across my conversations around the country, I heard a unified yearning for a society like that. Racism destroys every path to the promised land for all of us." Soon after I was born in New York City, my parents moved to New Orleans. The story my mother told was that her parents were not so thrilled with the fact that she married an Irishman. As she tells it, when my mother and father attended family gatherings with her family, everyone spoke Italian, no one spoke to my father. So they started out on their own way from the hub of my Italian relatives in New York to New Orleans, where my father had gotten a job. Obviously, given my ethnic background, Italian, Irish, you guessed it, I went to Roman Catholic schools. So this photo gives you a glimpse of my second grade class at Our Lady of the Most Holy Rosary School in New Orleans. Now, instead of a nun that year, I had a lay teacher, Miss Santos. She was a strict teacher, as you might be able to tell from this photo. There was something about her that made her even feel like a nun without the costume. Of course, I was the best little boy in the world, so I never got to experience her strictness. The auditorium in which this class picture was taken was also the place where we gathered in the school, gathered and stood on these very same bleachers for music class. I clearly remember singing a popular song at the time that came from a Disney movie sung by Frank Sinatra. Probably some of you would even sing along if we could. The lyrics went like this: "Next time you're found with your chin on the ground, there's a lot to be learned, so look around. Just what makes that little old ant think he'll move that rubber tree plant? Anyone knows an ant can't move a rubber tree plant." And now imagine a group of 7-year-olds singing in a high-pitched voices the chorus. But he's got high hopes. He's got high hopes. He's got high apple pie. in the sky hopes. So anytime you're getting low, instead of letting go, just remember that ant. Oops, there goes another rubber tree plant. Oops, there goes another rubber tree plant. Oops, there goes another rubber tree plant. So before leaving this photo, I know some of you wondering, where is Larry in that photo? So let's see the next one. And you see the arrow, that's me kind of right in the middle there. So, as silly as the song seems to me right now, I remember liking that song. I think I may have ridden the message of that song for many years. No matter how small I seemed in the world, no matter what obstacles seemed unsurmountable, those high hopes would help me get through. Perhaps for most of the children in that class who imbibed the dreams of their immigrant parents as well, high hopes would be what would carry us along. It wasn't the same, however, for all the children at that time. During that same year that my school photo was taken, a mother of a 6-year-old decided to enroll her child in a public school in their neighborhood in New Orleans, William Frantz Elementary School. The schools had recently been ordered to be desegregated, and the mother and father had high hopes for their children as well. Yes, in that same year of my photo, on November 14th, 1960, this photo shows federal marshals accompanying Ruby and her mother the 5 blocks to her new school. It's hard to imagine now, but as soon as the Bridges arrived at the school, white parents pulled their own children out. All the teachers refused to teach while a black child was enrolled. Only one person agreed to teach, Ruby. She was Barbara Henry from Boston, Massachusetts. For over a year, Henry taught Ruby in a classroom alone in a classroom, as if there was a whole class there because no one else would come to school. William Frantz Elementary School, I don't know if I already said this, was only about 14 minutes away from the school that I had pictured earlier, Our Lady of the Most Holy Rosary Catholic School. The schools were on a piece of land with the Mississippi River on the south, Lake Pontchartrain on the north. And it seems now that my school experience and Ruby Bridges' experience were an ocean apart from one another. I've been wondering, what did Ruby Bridges' parents say to her the day before they took her to school? What did they tell her after her first day of school, when almost everyone, students and teachers and parents, abandoned the school rather than be taught in the same school as a black child? Robert Coles, who was to become a prominent psychiatrist and author, offered to help Ruby during that time, and he spent some time having conversations with her. Later in Coles' book, The Spiritual Life of Children, he reflected with Ruby on her experiences. And when he interviewed her, he discovered that she had a strong faith. She said it this way: "But I also guess I knew I was the Ruby who had to do it, to go into that school and stay there, no matter what those people said standing outside." I wonder what songs Ruby's parents sang to her during that time. I want to believe that since her parents were supported by the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, that Ruby had heard these verses from Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was actually composed by a poem written by an NAACP leader, James Weldon Johnson. Maybe in all the maelstrom and hatred thrown her way during her simple walk from the car to the schoolhouse door, If not these exact words, maybe the spirit of these words sung within her. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Face the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on until victory is won. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. Although it certainly seems that our worlds were oceans apart, on that day that Ruby Bridges attended her school and I attended mine, I hope there were songs that she imbibed that gave her hope through trying circumstances that no 6-year-old should ever have to experience. In reflecting later on her experience in an autobiography, she wrote, "Don't follow the path. Go where there is no path and begin the trail. When you start a new trail equipped with courage, strength, and conviction, the only thing that can stop you is you." I feel inspired by those words. I connect to the wisdom of those words, even though our worlds were so different. It would be easy for us today to dismiss some of the ugliness of that time. We could say, it was another time. It was the beginning of the civil rights movement. It was the South. And although we have made some strides since that time of Ruby Bridges, clearly we understand that racism is still much a part of our country's horrific legacy. Yes, my friends, we know the truth of the matter is that racism is so insidious, so pervasive, that it is not confined to one particular time period or one particular region. Recent events obviously have reminded us that this ugliness still exists and is in our midst. Isabel Wilkerson captures so well in her book, Caste, the origins of our discontents, the ways that racism has been the foundation of this country. She writes, "Caste is the term that is more precise than race. It is more comprehensive, and it gets at the underlying infrastructure that often we cannot see but is there, undergirding much of the inequality and the injustices and disparities that we live with in this country." I really appreciate the metaphor that Wilkerson uses in her book. She says, America is an old house. We can never declare the work over. Wind, flood, drought, human upheavals batter a structure that is already fighting whatever flaws were left unattended in the original foundation. When you live in an old house, maybe some of us know this, you may not want to go into the basement after a storm to see what the rains have wrought. Choose not to look, however, at your own peril. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester, whether you choose to look at it or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. Whatever you are wishing will go away, will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you'd rather not see. Another recent book illuminates an aspect of racism that we might not otherwise see. Heather McGee's book, The Sum of Us, What Racism Cost Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together, points out some research that reveals how a particular narrative often goes unquestioned and is often reinforced in political and social discussions. The narrative has almost become viral and contributes to the fueling of racism and the mechanics of division in our society. The narrative leads to practices that operate in more clandestine ways than many of the laws that we got rid of during the civil rights period. Heather McGee, an expert in economics and social policy, connects the dots for us in this book. What is this underlying narrative? It is a zero-sum narrative. What awakened Heather McGee to the significance of the subterfuge of this narrative was the research of Michael Norton and Samuel Summers, professors of business and of psychology. They wrote an article, I think that the title of which gives you a glimpse into some of their research. The title was "Whites See Racism as a Zero-Sum Game That They Are Now Losing." And what they found in their survey was that white survey respondents rated anti-white bias as more prevalent in society than anti-black bias. On a scale of 1 to 10, for example, the average white scoring of anti-black bias was 3.6, but whites rated anti-white bias as 4.7. In essence, what they concluded in their study was the average white person views racism as a zero-sum game. If things are getting better for black people, it must be at the expense of white people. In probing a little further, McGee learned that this is not how black people tend to see it. In that same research, for black respondents, better outcomes for them don't necessarily mean worse outcomes for white people. It's not a zero-sum game from their perspective. McGee ponders the question. It sets her off into a journey in which she begins to try to discover the prevalence of this zero-sum mentality. A mentality that we saw in the Ruby Bridges story, where white parents would rather take their children out of their neighborhood school than have their child attend a school with Ruby Bridges for almost 2 years. A stunning example that McGee gives is that in Montgomery, Alabama, rather than desegregate the swimming pool so that black children and white children can enjoy swimming together on a hot summer day, the city council decided to drain the pool instead. City contractors poured dirt into the pool and paved it over. Every pool in every public park was closed down in Montgomery, Alabama, rather than desegregate, and they stayed closed for over a decade. These are just the most concrete examples, so to speak. Other prevalent examples are shared in McGee's book. One example is that rather than expand Medicaid in Texas and accept government funding to do so, the governor refused the money in order to deny blacks and immigrant Mexicans access to more health care. In a nutshell, the zero-sum narrative, if things are getting better for black people, it must be at the expense of white people, often goes unquestioned and is less visible to us than some of the outright discriminatory laws that were from an early era. The point, of course, is that everyone is impacted. The white children could not go to the pool as well. Poor whites could not get the kind of health care that they wanted and needed as well. So practices that in effect result in greater voter suppression in neighborhoods where people of color live are more insidious today. It can easily go under the radar unless we're really paying attention. McGee demonstrates that practices in mortgages and health insurance and education are meant to curtail equal benefits to people of color, and they also impact white people. Racism cost everyone is her major point. The zero-sum narrative is based on an us and them kind of mentality that concludes what's good for them is bad for us. So what's an alternative understanding? McGee calls her alternative the solidarity dividend. And she explains it this way. The gains made when people come together across race, that's what the solidarity dividend is. This involves engaging in collective action to benefit all of us, from universal health care to living wages to removing toxic waste in our most vulnerable communities. Let me give an example. In Richmond, California, it's dominated by a massive Chevron refinery, and it's dotted with toxic industrial sites. And due to the prevailing winds, North Richmond, which is 97% people of color, seems to receive most of the airborne pollution. And the result is that there is a disproportionately high rate of cancer and asthma in that community. But when she examined the data, McGee discovered that the neighborhood of Point Richmond, predominantly white and wealthy, recorded about the same amount of toxins in the air. So residents came together and organized in such a way that they blocked Chevron from a major plant expansion. And they won community benefits that included a 60-acre solar energy field owned by the public. Richmond's solidarity dividend has resulted in reduced pollution, more jobs, and a chance for better health for everyone. I believe that understanding this solidarity dividend broadens our conviction that when we come together across our differences, when we work for the common good, that everyone can benefit. The care for the common good has been an emphasis of our Unitarian Universalist tradition as well. While it's true that we honor individual perspectives, we are also at our best as concerned about the common good as well. When our transcendentalist ancestors, for example, put a great emphasis on individual spiritual development, they also were actively involved in some of the social reform movements of their time, women's suffrage, abolitionist movement, and other reforms. Their efforts for the common good are inseparable from their conviction and our conviction in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. So McGee, in the reading that I offered this morning, chimes in. She says, for all the differences among the world's major religions, they all hold compassion and human interconnectedness as central values. They all subscribe to a sacred vision of a world without racism. Indeed, across many faith traditions, we understand our essential connection to one another as human beings and to the earth. Whether it's the mystic's vision of unity, the Buddhist understanding of interbeing, the Hindu or Vedanta understanding of that thou art, or the Christian's adage to love your neighbor as yourself, or the Unitarian Universalist perspective on the interdependent web, the perennial wisdom which sometimes we receive only in fleeting glimpses of awareness, as that we are all interconnected. Our well-being is connected to the well-being of others. Individual freedom without greater liberation from the structures and the practices that limit possibilities for others diminish all of us. If during this pandemic we have not expanded our social consciousness to realize that our welfare and the wealth of all is interconnected, then maybe we haven't awakened during this time to the truth that is staring us in the face. If during this climate emergency we do not understand in our heart of hearts that we are deeply connected and that our care for the earth is care for all beings and creatures of the earth, then we have missed an opportunity for expanding our conscious awareness of what it means to be alive in this moment. So in closing, I offer these lyrics composed by my late friend and colleague Tom Michelson and included in our hymnal. Though our voices may be muffled by our masks this morning, may we sing these verses within our own heart and within our collective heart. May these words carry us into the world this week with a compassion that includes a care for the common good. Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call for the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Now let us enjoy the music provided by Kathy, our music director, and Richard Speck. We'll build the land.
Many of you have heard me give the stewardship moment more than a handful of times. What can I say? I'm passionate about this community and all the good that it does. First You takes care of us in a myriad of ways. Now it is time for us to take care of First You by supporting our church financially. There are now 4 ways to give. If you are in the building, you can write a check or give a cash donation as you exit. After the service, you'll see the box for offering at the back of the sanctuary. For the folks online, or for those who prefer paperless giving, you can click on the donation page of our website at firstuuwilm.org, or you can utilize the new Vanco mobile faith engagement app. I'm going to say that again. Vanco mobile faith engagement app on your smart device. This is replacing the Give Plus app this week on September 30th. And of course, for the traditional, an old-fashioned check mailed the old-fashioned way to our street address on the screen will work as well. For all the ways First You supports us, let us return the love and support. We thank you for your generosity and your continued commitment to First You. And now, please join me in dedicating our offering. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
We clear off the table, leftovers safe, wash dishes and put them away. I told you a story, tucked you tight, at the end of your lookout day. As the moon sails to carry you to sea, over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me, and keep you company. Oh, you can be anybody you want to be, you can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure and your need will be the love you leave behind when you're gone. There are girls who grow up strong and bold, there are boys quiet and behind. Some race on ahead, some follow behind, some go in their own way and time. Some women love women, some men love men, some raise children, some never do. You can dream of a day never reaching the end of everything possible for you. Don't be rattled by names, quite just by names, but see how spirit's true. If you give your friends God's heart of yourself, they'll give the same back to you. Oh, you can be anybody you want to be, you can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your worth and your
So as we prepare to conclude our time of worship and move to whatever else is next in our day, don't rush out without first pausing and taking a moment to hear the song of your own heart. Take a moment to hear the songs of those in our world whose voices we might not readily hear, and who, like us, endeavor to be included in our care for the common good. These closing words are by Reverend Manish Mishra Marzetti. Can you still hear the song, the one sung for you when you were born? Listen carefully. Can you hear it still? A song of possibility. A reminder that we still have time to be who and what we need to be. Amen.
May we honor our connection to our heart songs as we depart in peace.
Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. That change will come to you. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. That change will come to you. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. That change will come to you. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. That change will come